It started with a landscape, just a simple video, a pine forest rolling by outside a car window, pale mist curling between the trunks. Ksenia had posted it on her story the night before, adding a caption with heart emojis and the words, "Girls retreat, green heart, finally woman in lotus position." But Alex watched it again and again. There was no laughter in the background, no chatter, no voices at all. It was too quiet. He sat on the edge of his couch, hoodie half zipped, phone clutched in one hand, thumb hovering over the pause button. It was the third time she'd uploaded something vague like this. Distant scenery, cryptic emojis, no proof of company. She'd said it was a weekend with her college friends. But something didn't fit. He knew her patterns. She loved showing faces, especially hers. Instead, the camera never turned around. Alex exhaled slowly and leaned forward, elbows on knees. His eyes were bloodshot from a sleepless night. Ever since she left Friday morning, something had gnawed at him, a quiet, crawling unease. He'd waved goodbye from the balcony, watched her taxi vanish into traffic. Now, his gut screamed that something was wrong. He pulled up their last chat. Her messages were light, flirty, normal, but too normal, as if written with effort, not ease. He tapped her location tag on the story. The forest in the background matched one he recognized, a recreation area about 2 hours outside the city. Lake Salnekny, a few cabins dotting the shoreline, private rental homes. And just like that, the decision was made. Alex tossed his phone onto the seat of his old BMW, turned the key, and pulled away from the curb. He didn't tell anyone where he was going, especially not his brother. Dan had been acting strange lately, too, asking offhand questions about Ksenia, showing up less and less. Alex didn't like it, didn't trust it. The road out of Moscow blurred under his tires. Gray skies pressed low over the treetops as he drove, headlights on, music off. Silence filled the car like fog. His thoughts chased themselves in circles. Was he paranoid? Or just finally seeing the truth? As the forest thickened, memories came creeping back. Of late night calls Ksenia declined, of her sudden changes in plans, of how Dan always seemed to disappear when she did. Coincidence? Maybe. Maybe not. By the time he pulled off onto the dirt road near the lake, Alex's jaw was tight, hands gripping the wheel hard enough to ache. Up ahead, nestled in the trees, a cabin appeared, smoke curling lazily from its chimney. A dark SUV was parked outside, not Ksenia's car, but familiar. His breath caught. He cut the engine and sat motionless, staring through the windshield. The world outside was quiet, too quiet. And then, the door opened. Someone stepped out onto the porch in a t-shirt and boxers, stretching, cigarette in hand. It was Dan. Alex's stomach turned to ice. Alex didn't move at first. Dan stood there for a while, lit by the low porch light and the flicker of his cigarette. He looked relaxed, too relaxed, like someone on vacation, not someone who should be sneaking around with his younger brother's girlfriend. Alex's breath fogged up the inside of the windshield. He stayed still, hidden in the shadows, watching. Dan took a long drag, exhaled, and then, as if sensing something, glanced toward the woods, toward the car. Alex ducked low, heart hammering. He felt ridiculous, like a stalker, like someone who didn't belong in his own life. But this was his life, or it had been. He waited until Dan went back inside before slipping out of the car. The cold bit at his skin, and the forest was deathly quiet. No wind, no birdsong, just the distant hiss of the lake and the crunch of dry pine needles beneath his boots. He approached the cabin slowly, each step measured, careful. The windows glowed amber from inside, warm and safe, a cruel contrast to the storm inside his chest. Through a side window, he glimpsed movement, a flash of blonde hair, a figure setting a wine glass on the table. Ksenia. Her back was to him. She wore the oversized cream sweater he had given her last fall, the same one she said she liked because it smelled like him. Now she wore it here, for Dan. His fingers curled into fists. He walked to the door and knocked twice. The second stretched. No one answered. He knocked again, harder this time. He could hear footsteps inside, then the sound of something falling. The door creaked open. Dan stood there, shirtless, hair tousled, eyes wide. It took a second for recognition to settle in. Then came the smirk. Alex, what the hell are you doing here? Alex stared at him. Is she here? Dan leaned against the frame, blocking the doorway just enough to make it clear. He wasn't planning to invite him in. It's a weekend trip, Dan said casually. Nothing you need to worry about. Behind him, a voice called out. Dan? Who is it? Ksenia. Alex didn't wait for permission. He stepped forward, forcing Dan to retreat a half step. The hallway smelled like red wine, shampoo, and something else, the faint scent of musk and sweat that didn't belong to him. He saw her. Ksenia froze halfway into the room. Her face drained of color. She didn't even try to hide it. No one said anything. The silence filled the space between them like smoke. Dan closed the door behind Alex with a quiet click, like a trap snapping shut. Ksenia looked at Alex. Her mouth opened, then closed again. She didn't speak, didn't reach for him, just stared, as if unsure whether to lie or confess. Alex stepped into the center of the room. His voice came out low and level. You said you were with your friends. I was going to tell you, she whispered. When? He asked. Before or after the wine? The bed? The lies. Dan moved to stand beside her like it was the most natural thing in the world. The sight of them, together, casual, intimate, struck Alex harder than any punch could have. He looked down, jaw tight, then back up. You've been doing this a while, haven't you? He said quietly. How long? No one answered. He stepped past them and placed his phone on the table. Tapped the screen. A photo came up, a snapshot of the three of them, smiling, arms around each other at New Year's last year. Happy, or pretending to be. Alex looked at the image, then at them. I wanted to believe the story I was living in was real, he said. But you two were just rewriting it behind my back. He turned toward the door, but stopped. You know what's funny? He said without looking back. I thought this was going to break me. He opened the door. But now I know who you are. And that's the first honest thing I've had in a long time. Then he left, stepping into the darkness, into the cold, but with something new hardening inside his chest. Not despair, something colder. The forest swallowed the cabin behind him. Alex walked aimlessly at first. No direction, just movement. It was instinct, like running from a fire, even when the flames were still burning in your chest. The cold didn't bother him anymore. His body moved, but his mind was unraveling. He didn't remember unlocking the car. Just that suddenly he was inside, gripping the steering wheel with white knuckles, staring blankly at the dashboard. They didn't deny it. That was the part that haunted him most. Not the betrayal itself, but the silence. The absence of denial, of shame. As if his pain was just inconvenient background noise. He rested his forehead against the steering wheel, letting the pressure anchor him. This wasn't just about Ksenia. This was about Dan. He hadn't said a word since Alex walked in. No apologies. No justification. Just that smug tilt of his head, that silent message. You should have seen this coming. Alex closed his eyes and let the memories rush in. Growing up, Dan had always been the louder one, the reckless one. Their parents doted on Alex, called him the steady hand, the responsible one. But Dan was the one who lit up rooms, broke rules, got into fights, and somehow made people laugh instead of hate him. Alex used to cover for him, small things, stupid things. But it always came with a price. Dan took more than he gave. Attention, trust. And now, Ksenia. He had stolen her, yes. But worse, he'd stolen the image Alex had built of himself. A man who was smart enough to see warning signs. Careful enough not to be blindsided. Wrong. He'd been played like a stranger. The car interior was silent except for the ticking of the cooling engine. The forest was still. But Alex's thoughts kept spiraling. How long had they been doing this? What kind of person did it take to kiss one brother and sleep with another? And what did it say about him that he hadn't seen it? Then his phone vibrated. A message from an unknown number. He stared at it, thumb hovering over the screen. Finally, he opened it. You weren't supposed to find out like this. I'm sorry. Please don't do anything stupid. No name, but it didn't need one. Ksenia. He didn't reply. What did she expect him to say? That was okay. That he forgave her? No. He didn't even know what forgiveness would look like in this kind of betrayal. Not just from a partner, but from blood. He sat in the dark for another hour, maybe two, long enough for the heater to kick on and for the adrenaline to drain from his body, leaving only a hollow ache. Finally, he turned the key, but didn't drive away. Not yet. Instead, he reached for the glove compartment. Inside, under old insurance papers, was the photo, the one he'd brought but hadn't shown them. It was a picture from when they were 10 and 12. Two brothers standing barefoot at a lake just like this one, grinning like idiots, faces sunburned, holding a frog they'd caught in a jar. Alex had his arm around Dan's shoulders. Dan's smile was wild and gap-toothed. Back then, they were inseparable. Back before everything grew sharp. He looked at it for a long time, then folded it once, neatly, and put it back. The next morning, he didn't drive home. He drove into town, found the nearest open cafe, and sat in the corner with a cup of burnt coffee he didn't touch. He watched the families and couples filter in. Sunday morning. Innocent lives. He felt detached from them. Like he was watching a film he wasn't part of anymore. Then came another message. This time from Dan. We need to talk. Before this gets worse. Alex didn't respond. Then a second one followed, a few seconds later. She's pregnant. The cup slipped slightly in his hand. He read the message 3 times, each word louder than the last. She's pregnant. A new kind of silence wrapped itself around him, different from the night before. Not hot with rage, not icy with betrayal. Just absence. As if the ground beneath him had been quietly replaced with water. Was it his? Was it Dan's? Did they even know? He stared at the message, then typed one word. When? No reply. Alex leaned back in his chair, staring out at the frost-glazed street, watching a couple laugh over croissants. He wondered what it was like to trust someone without hesitation. He didn't know if he ever would again. The phone stayed quiet. Then his thoughts shifted, not to Ksenia, not to Dan, but to what came next. If this child existed, and was Dan's, how far would his brother go to keep the illusion alive? How much of what had happened was accidental? And how much was orchestrated? Because suddenly, it didn't feel like just a betrayal of lust. It felt like something deeper. A war that had started long before Alex noticed the first story on Ksenia's page. Alex didn't return home that day, or the next. Instead, he checked into a small motel on the outskirts of the city, a nameless building with flickering hallway lights and peeling wallpaper. The kind of place you could disappear in. He told no one where he was, turned off read receipts, and left his phone in airplane mode most of the day. It wasn't running. It was regrouping. He needed space to think, to see clearly, because now the betrayal had mutated. It wasn't just about Ksenia or Dan. It was about everything. The past, the patterns, the rot that had always been beneath the surface. The message about the pregnancy stayed unread since Saturday. He hadn't responded. He wouldn't. Not until he knew what to do. Instead, he pulled out a box of old things he'd kept in the trunk of his car. Mementos from their childhood. Polaroids, school awards, notes scribbled in crooked kid handwriting. One of them caught his eye. A wrinkled envelope with their mother's handwriting on it. Inside was a letter written when she was in the hospital a few months before she died. Alex had read it once before, but skimmed it. Now, the words sank in like weights. I know you and Dan have drifted. I see the cracks, even when you try to hide them. You've always protected him, Alex, even when he hurt you. I've never said this, but you need to stop pretending it's your job to carry him. He stared at that sentence. Even when he hurt you. Something stirred. A memory, half buried. Summer. Age 15. Dan's birthday party. His first real girlfriend. Alia. Blonde, shy, soft-spoken. She had a crush on Alex. Everyone joked about it. He dismissed it, uncomfortable. Then one day, she stopped coming around, and Dan wouldn't speak to him for 2 months. Out of nowhere. Later, he heard Alia transferred schools. Dan never talked about her again. It clicked. That was the beginning. Not of the betrayal, but the pattern. Dan had always tried to take what Alex didn't offer. What he couldn't have. And when he couldn't take it, he'd find a way to poison it. Like he did now. Maybe Ksenia wasn't even the endgame. Maybe she was just another piece. Alex sat back on the creaky motel bed, staring at the ceiling. Dan had always resented being the second son, the shadow. But Alex had never fought him. Not really. He let things slide. Let Dan win when it didn't matter. Maybe that was the mistake. because now it did matter. He got dressed and left the room around dusk. The city shimmered with cold amber light. Traffic hissed along wet streets. He drove with no destination, just letting the motion carry him. And then, like gravity, he found himself pulling toward their childhood home. Now empty, owned by a cousin who barely used it. The front door creaked open like it remembered him. Inside, everything was coated in silence. Old furniture, dust-covered. The kitchen still had their father's calendar from 3 years ago pinned to the fridge. The past hadn't moved on here. It waited. He wandered upstairs. His old room was untouched, as if time had frozen. But it wasn't that room he came to see. It was the attic. He hadn't been up there in years. The wood stairs groaned under his weight. The air smelled like paper and mildew. Boxes lined the floor, and in the back, behind the old winter coats and broken lamps, was his box. The one he hadn't touched since college. He opened it. Inside were journals, high school notebooks, old voice recorders, and at the bottom, the family camcorder. The battery was dead, but the tapes were still inside. He found a charger in the corner, plugged it in, and waited. An hour later, in the flickering glow of the attic bulb, he watched. Birthdays, school plays, summer vacations, all of it mundane, until he reached the tape labeled Lake Trip 2009. He remembered that trip, the last time they were truly close. The footage was shaky, full of laughter, firelight, marshmallows. But in the middle, a strange scene. Dan talking to Ksenia, or rather, a girl who looked like her. No, it was her. Young. They had known each other longer than he remembered. He thought he met her through mutual friends in university. But here she was, 15 years old, laughing at Dan's jokes. A sick realization spread in his gut. She'd known Dan before she ever met Alex. This didn't start last year. It had never ended. Alex paused the video. The betrayal wasn't a moment. It was a thread, sewn years ago, pulled tighter and tighter until the whole damn thing unraveled. And now he had a choice. Turn away, or pull harder. A knock echoed from downstairs. He froze. Then a voice, Dan's. I know you're in there. Can we talk? Alex didn't move. Didn't answer. He just turned off the screen. And for the first time in years, he smiled, small and cold. The game had changed. He wasn't here to understand anymore. He was here to finish it. The knock echoed again. Dan's voice quieter now. Alex, please. Alex sat on the attic floor, back to the wall, camcorder still warm in his hands. He didn't answer. Didn't move. Let Dan wait in that silence. Let him wonder. Eventually, the footsteps retreated down the stairs. A car door opened. Closed. The engine coughed to life and faded into the night. Still, Alex didn't move. He was no longer interested in confrontation. There was nothing left to say. He had spent his whole life looking for clarity. Try to fix things. Trying to hold family, love, and trust together like glassware on a sinking shelf. But now he understood, some things aren't meant to be mended. Some things are meant to be dropped and shattered. He didn't go back to the motel. He didn't go back to his apartment. Instead, he returned to the cabin. It was empty. Dan was gone. Ksenia too. But they had left traces, the wine glasses still on the table, her scarf thrown across the armchair. Her perfume clung to the air, a ghost of the life they'd been living without him. He moved quietly through the space, like a man visiting a crime scene. Every object, every surface, now loaded with meaning. Her toothbrush in the bathroom. Dan's boots at the door. They'd built a parallel life. A version of love where he didn't exist. He opened the drawer next to the bed and found her journal. It wasn't locked. He didn't want to read it, but he did. Just a few lines. Enough. Sometimes I think I love them both, just in different ways. It makes me feel free. Alex makes me feel safe. But one is a cage, and one is a cliff. And I can't keep balancing between them. A cage. A cliff. He closed the journal. No rage. No outburst. Just a steady, hollow calm. By morning, he had packed everything that belonged to her into a box. He left it on the porch with a note that read, "For whichever version of yourself you decide to be." He didn't sign it. He didn't need to. On the way back to the city, he took a detour, parked by the lake. The same lake where the three of them had once laughed under fireworks. He stepped out of the car and walked to the water's edge, the air still and glassy. He took out the photo, the one of him, Dan, and Ksenia on New Year's Eve, smiles so wide they looked real. He dropped it in the water, watched it curl and darken, then vanish beneath the surface. In the following weeks, he didn't return any messages. Didn't try to call. So did Ksenia. She sent another message, just one word, talk. He left it unread. Instead, he made changes. Quiet once. Sold the apartment. Deleted old photos. Started running again. Not to escape, but to move. To breathe. He didn't chase closure. Didn't need revenge. He understood now that pain doesn't end with punishment. It ends when you stop feeding it. And he had stopped. One day, months later, a letter arrived. No return address. Inside, a single ultrasound photo. And a handwritten note. We're not asking for anything. Just thought you should know. No name. No apology. No request. Alex stared at the image for a long time. Then folded the letter once and placed it in the back of a drawer. Some truths don't need answers. Some endings don't need explanation. And some people, no matter how much you love them, don't belong in your life anymore.